Let me guess. You put together the perfect draft, your guys have the right item build, and you still get cleanly wiped in the team fight that decides the series. It happens. But what if I told you it's not a skill gap on your team, but you still managing like it's your first game? In Teamfight Manager 2, the difference between an amateur coach and an esports legend isn't the player's salary. It's in micro decisions the game never really teaches you. So if you're tired of losing series over small details, today I bring you 10 advanced tips that you simply must master before facing the Major League. I'm Matthew, and the video starts right now. If there's one thing Teamfight Manager 2 makes clear, it's that you can't treat everyone in the bot lane the same. When you put an attack with a support down there, the game already gives you strong signs of how this dynamic should work. And ignoring that is basically throwing gold away, literally. The most important detail here is how gold is distributed. The support simply earns less gold when near the attack while clearing minions. In other words, if you don't pay attention, you end up weakening both at the same time instead of strengthening your true carry. And in this game, unlike some other managers, this isn't subtle. The impact on team performance is very direct. Therefore, the best decision is almost always clear. Focus everything on the attack. Let them farm, grow, and become your main source of damage in the mid and late game. The support remains important, of course, but their role here is different. Control, utility, protection. It's not about splitting resources. It's about empowering whoever will actually carry. And the most interesting part is that this isn't just an isolated strategic choice. It's basically the game teaching you a classic MOBA fundamental. Teamfight Manager 2 reinforces this idea very directly, so when you understand it and apply it correctly, it feels like the entire team starts to flow better. It's that type of simple adjustment that completely changes match outcomes. At first, it seems like overkill to mess with stance, target priority, and dive for each character. But when you start adjusting this based on the champion, the game virtually becomes a different experience. It's not just about drafting well, it's about making every piece function exactly as it should within the match. For example, it makes no sense to pick an assassin and leave them playing neutrally or defensively. This type of champion needs to be configured for dives, focusing on the backline, being aggressive all the time. That's what makes them fulfill their role, eliminating carries quickly and creating a numerical advantage. If you don't adjust this, they just become a weak character trying to frontline, and it even looks like the champion is bad, when in reality, it's just the wrong configuration. Now, when you go to the other side, like a control mage or a support with CC, the logic changes completely. These characters work much better protecting the backline and prioritizing targets that enter your team. Here, a more defensive or balanced stance makes much more sense. It's the type of adjustment that prevents that classic scenario where your team loses because no one could handle the enemy dive. To me, this system is one of the game's most advanced points, precisely because it rewards those who understand the role of each champion within the comp. It's not just about building a strong team, it's about aligning the behavior, target, and aggressiveness of each player with their function. When you get this right, your team starts looking much more coordinated, even as an AI. And honestly, that's when you start playing the game at a level well above average. One of the most underestimated things is team distance control. And when you start tinkering with this consciously, the game changes completely. It's not just about choosing good champions, it's about how you make them behave during a fight. And this is where the decision between keeping the team compact or spread out comes in. If you are playing with assassins or dive champions like Monk, bringing everyone close in narrow distance creates a true death ball. And that works very well because you concentrate pressure on a single point, engage quickly, and dismantle the enemy team before they can react. It's that type of fight that ends in seconds because everyone on your side is synchronized on the same target. Now, if your composition revolves around mages and area damage, doing the opposite is the ideal approach. Keeping the team more spread out in wide distance makes any mass enemy engage attempt very difficult. You avoid taking collective crowd control, and you maximize the value of your own area damage, because you force the enemy to reposition constantly while you punish them from afar. The coolest part is that this isn't just a fine detail. It's a tactical decision that defines how the fights will unfold. When you get this distance configuration right according to your comp, everything seems to click. Engages are cleaner, damage is more efficient, and the team is much harder to punish. It's that kind of adjustment that separates an okay team from a truly dominant one. One of the decisions that seems simple at first, but in practice determines whether you win or lose in Teamfight Manager 2, is controlling jungle monsters. Many people go on autopilot and try to fight for every objective that appears, but that is exactly the type of error the game punishes heavily. Here, it's not about always fighting, it's about knowing when it makes sense to fight. Even before the monster spawns, I like to decide what my team will do. If my composition is weaker in the early game or relies on scaling, often the best move is simply to concede the objective and avoid a bad fight. It seems strange at first, but losing a monster is much less worse than losing a teamfight, a turret, and still opening the way for the enemy to pressure the entire map. Now, when you decide to contest, it must be with clear intent. You can't just go there to see what happens. If the team is well positioned, with abilities ready, and a composition advantage at that moment, then it is worth fighting for Serpent or Morgard. These well-executed fights completely turn the game around, but when they are poorly planned, the effect is the opposite. You hand them an advantage on a silver platter. To me, the biggest leap in quality comes when you stop reacting to the objective and start playing around it with strategy. Deciding to concede is also playing well. And when you understand this, the game stops being just about mechanics or drafts and starts being about intelligent decision-making. That's when you start avoiding those losses that seem to come out of nowhere, but actually started from a bad decision way back. It's no use for your champion to be strong with a gold or level advantage if the build is wrong. The game punishes this in a very direct way, sometimes almost cruelly. The main point is to respect the scaling type of each champion. If they deal magic damage, you need to invest in that. If it's physical, the same logic applies. It seems basic, but in practice, it's very easy to mess up, especially when you try to adapt quickly in the middle of a match. And when that happens, the champion starts hitting for less, surviving less, and losing relevance even while ahead. And that's where the detail that makes all the difference comes in. Certain roles simply don't work without the right items. An assassin without penetration can't finish anyone, and a tank without defense just becomes an easy target that holds nothing. It's not just losing efficiency, it's almost as if the champion stops fulfilling their function within the composition. The most interesting part is that the game simulates this quite faithfully to what we expect from a competitive system. When you get the synergy of items with the champion's role right, everything flows better. Damage connects, sustain appears, the team gains consistency, but when you mess it up, it doesn't matter how well you started, the match slips away fast. Split pushing, the way many people try to use it, ends up being just an isolated player doing nothing, but when you truly understand how to apply the strategy, it becomes an absurd map control tool. Instead of thinking, I'm going to split the team, I think more about creating pressure in 2 points at the same time. While one part of the team positions itself for objectives like Serpent or Morgard, you put a specific champion, usually with high mobility, to push alone in another lane. It's not just pushing waves, it's threatening structures all the time. The effect of this is immediate. The opponent is forced to react. And here is the strongest point of the strategy: there is no perfect response. If they send someone to stop the split push, they lose strength in the main fight. If they ignore it, they start to concede towers, space, and map control. And if they try to poorly balance this decision, they end up failing on both sides. What really makes this work is the right choice of player and configuration. This champion needs to be prepared to play aggressively, escape from bad situations, and continue pressing without depending on the team. When everything clicks, you don't just gain an advantage, you control the rhythm of the match and force the other side to play your way. One of the most interesting things is how players aren't just static numbers. They literally think better or worse, depending on how you train each attribute. This completely changes how you build your team, because it's not enough to pick good champions. You need to shape who is behind them. Many people fall into the trap of focusing only on mechanics: ability, precision, execution, reaction time. Sure, that helps a lot, especially in more aggressive comps. But there comes a point where that alone doesn't sustain performance, especially when matches start to get longer and more chaotic. That's where the less obvious attributes come in, like map perception, decision-making, and mental resistance. These are what make the difference when the game gets out of control or when the series starts to weigh on them. A player with good judgment and map awareness simply makes fewer mistakes in critical moments, while mental toughness maintains performance even under pressure. And there is a detail that changes everything in long series: team chemistry. Communication isn't just a bonus, it's what keeps the team consistent from one game to the next. When you balance mechanics with these more invisible aspects, the AI's behavior improves in a very noticeable way. The team stops oscillating so much and starts playing with much more intelligence. There are moments when it's no use having more damage on paper. If your team isn't well positioned, it simply can't apply any of it. And that's where this concept of area damage control comes in, which in practice is much more about team organization than numbers. I usually think of the front line as a tool first, not just as resistance. When you put tanks or melee fighters well adjusted to draw attention and hold space, you create an active shield that allows the rest of the team to play with much more freedom. They aren't there just to soak up damage, but to dictate where the fight happens. With that working, mages and snipers start to truly shine. They need time and distance to cause impact. And this type of formation delivers exactly that. Instead of being exposed or caught out of position, they can hit constantly while chaos happens on the front line. It's that type of situation where the damage starts to accumulate, and when you realize it, the fight is already turned. What I like most is how this dismantles assassin-based compositions. These characters rely on picking off isolated targets, but when there is a solid front line protecting the back line well, the opportunities simply disappear. To me, when this positioning is well adjusted, the game becomes much more controlled, and the opponent is the one who starts having difficulty finding any opening. There are matches you lose before they even start, and it almost always comes from a wrong choice in global strategies. This pre-game moment isn't just preparation. It's where you define how your team will behave from the first to the last minute. Ignoring this is entering with no plan at all. When you opt for something like early diving, you are basically saying you want to dominate early. It's constant pressure, forcing fights, trying to break the opponent's rhythm before they get organized. This type of approach works very well with aggressive compositions, which need a quick advantage so they don't lose impact later. Now, if your team scales better over time, the logic is completely different. It makes no sense to try to accelerate the game unnecessarily. The focus shifts to control, safe farming, and defense. You play with patience, avoiding mistakes, waiting for the moment your champions really start to make a difference. When this choice matches your composition, everything becomes more natural within the match. Decisions seem more coherent, the team exposes itself less unnecessarily, and the fights start to happen on your time, not the opponent's. That's when you feel that the strategy isn't just on paper, but guiding every move in the game. Many people go into the training system thinking it's just about increasing general numbers, and that's it. But that's not how you get the best out of your team. If you distribute points randomly, the team might improve on paper, but within the match, they continue to make bad decisions and mess up basic things. What really transforms performance is focusing first on attributes that affect behavior. Judgment and map awareness are the ones that impact this the most. When these two are well developed, your players start to better understand what is happening on the map, choose when to fight and when to retreat, and participate more actively in important plays. After that, refinement comes with skill accuracy and skill dodging. Here you start to notice a practical difference in fights. Important abilities start to land more frequently, and players survive longer because they avoid unnecessary damage. This gives much greater consistency to the team, especially in more balanced matches. In the end, a player with good decisions and solid execution is worth much more than someone with high numbers in attack and defense, but no game intelligence. When you adjust this focus in training, the change isn't just statistical, it's visible in the way the team moves, reacts, and controls the entire match.